Avengers! Assemble.
Hello, everyone. This is Excelsior, a Marvel's Avengers podcast, the number one podcast for Marvel's Avengers game in the world. I'm your director, Christian Buckley, joined by the Apex legend himself, Jack Martin.
Excelsior. Now, we may have to change that title, Christian, because Apex Legends has just fallen off the face of the map for me. I have just exclusively been playing this game. This has just occupied my free time.
Okay. The Avenger, then? Like one Carol Danvers?
Maybe.
I was going to say, I was worried, because I thought when you said that title, you were referring to us no longer being the number one Marvel's Avengers podcast for Crystal Dynamics' Square Enix's Marvel's Avengers.
As far as I know, we still are the kings of that.
As it should be.
Yeah.
This is your episode recording September 11th for the upcoming week. What's new in the shops, the war tables, all of this fun stuff. We're going to get into that. Starting with some patch information. We got some patch notes for patch 1.25, the upcoming 1.3 patch, a new weekly war table blog that's going to be updated every Thursday, which is lucky for us because we record on Fridays. We're going to touch a little more on where we are in the multiplayer in terms of progression and experience. And then in the later part of the show, you'll be able to see it in a timestamp down below. We're going to get into some spoiler talk about the main campaign now that both of us have beat it. And the game's been out in the world for, 1 to 2 weeks at this point?
Yeah, like a week and a half.
Yeah. So, why don't we kick things off with Fury's report, starting with patch 1.25, the patch that is already out, working on some fixes for the game. Because let me tell you, Jack, I don't know if you've seen this, but the game's kind of broken in some places.
Is it?
Yeah. Very briefly, what bugs or glitches have you experienced personally?
Sure. I actually recorded this on my PlayStation. If you want, I could send this over to have in the background. But I ran into a particular bug where I've only run into this once, so it was only one issue, but it was super annoying. I was flying around as Iron Man, as I have been doing. Mm-hmm. And the skybox just kept flickering, as it should be, and then black, and then as it should be, and it was just nauseating. So that was pretty bad. I've ran into one recently where I was playing through a hive, and I was supposed to defeat all the enemies, and I did, and I couldn't progress further past that. That was just a reload checkpoint fix. But then I've had a lot of frame rate issues and stuttering, and I think I ran into an infinite load screen at one point. So, yeah, definitely noticeable bugs that have sort of hindered my experience.
Right, and worth reiterating, if anybody new is listening right now, you're playing on a base PS4?
Yes, that is correct.
I've been playing on a PS4 Pro in performance mode, and you definitely played it more than me. How many hours do you think you'd have in the game right now, if you had to guess?
I would say over 20 to 30 maybe.
Okay. Yeah, I think you might have more than that because I was going to say I'm 20 to 30, maybe 33-ish.
Okay, then yeah, I'd probably have more than that. As I've said before, I'm notoriously awful at keeping track of how long I've played. I've actually just subscribed to this PlayStation Messenger bot that will tell you how many hours of a game you've played.
Interesting. I might sign up for that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, on my end, I think the only issues I've seen and experienced in my playtime has been mostly in the Avengers Initiative stuff, not really the story. The biggest thing I think for sure is the decrypting of the outfit patches, I forget what they're called. They're encrypted patches that you can go to the costume.
The patterns,
table.
Right?
Yeah, the patterns. Thank you.
Yeah.
There's a variety of different tiers of how rare they can be. I probably went to the station to decrypt them, let's say 6 times. Maybe 7 or 8. 3 of them worked.
Oof.
And the other ones got burnt and then nothing spawned for me.
That's awful.
So
I had that happen a couple times to me as well.
Mm-hmm.
But since a few days ago, I haven't had any issues.
Yeah, every time I've gone since a couple days ago, and probably because of the patch based on when it came out, but Yeah, I haven't really had many other issues with decryption. I don't think I got those costumes back, the ones that I should have earned, but thankfully I didn't lose any costumes that I already had unlocked because I know for some people they were disappearing. They were able to get them back. It was just like a bit of a scare. So when we run through some of the stuff that patch 1.2.5 is doing, this should be out in the world for you all if you're updated right now. Basically, it went over some bug fixes, infinite loading screens, like Jack said. They addressed a majority of instances of a partially loaded helicarrier where characters would infinitely fall, and there would be no way to access the Avengers initiative. There was also a bug where you could get trapped under the floor or like fall out of the world, and there's no way for you to undo it, so you have to restart your campaign.
Wow,
That
that's awful.
that seemed very rare. But I was uploading my cloud save constantly every time I close the game. Campaign mission reward outfits will no longer disappear. We covered that. Marketplace and challenge card outfits should no longer be temporarily locked if you lose connectivity with the game. A little bit of updated UI stuff, optimizing load times, and week one, we didn't really touch on this last week, but there was an issue with progression for the challenge card. You would have done your daily or weekly, and the challenge card may have not reflected the points you would have earned. That got fixed real quick. That was in one of the first patches, but that is what 1.25 has been doing for us as we play. So as far as the next patch is concerned, 1.3 is going to be fixing even more bugs regarding costumes, which have been increasingly being fixed. But 1.3 is going to be the largest patch so far. It's going to focus on resolving bad states for bugs that were fixed in 1.2.5 already, as well as having a bunch of quality of life changes. They're currently testing 1.3, so I wouldn't be surprised if it drops sometime before next episode. But yeah, rough to see this many issues in the game. Thankfully, I haven't experienced most of them, but I'll give them that. Seeing their response and seeing how like open they've been about what they're trying to fix, what the priorities of everything is, as well as supplying some fixes like pre-patch of like, hey, just don't do this and then it'll be fine. I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, I've heard some people compare this game to Jedi Fallen Order, where that game launched and had some similar bug issues and some frame rate drops. And I feel like some other people have said, both of those games would have been better received or would have been better to just wait 6 months before launching.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I totally think that's the case for this game as well. Granted, games as a service like Destiny and like the Division and games like that usually launch with bugs and glitches like this.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say that that's any excuse for this, because I don't think it is. I think it's sort of expected though. Like going into this like week, I sort of expected the game to be like this.
Yeah.
Which again is not sort of any excuse or anything, but it is sort of going into the game with expectations that there's probably going to be a lot of problems with this game, and there were.
Yeah. I've also seen issues with matchmaking. Again, that's not something I fully experienced, just because if I'm doing multiplayer, I'm either doing it with you or one of my other friends that got the game. So matchmaking is another thing I've seen among the community, specifically some people on my timeline being like, hey, I'm trying to match with randoms, not working. But yeah, I'll still back up the fact that I think this is one of the smoother games as a service launches that I've experienced. Like you said, it's kind of to be expected that there's going to be things like that. Not that that's a good thing, but like,
right.
I think there's a world where this could have been a lot worse. In terms of stability and bugs and things like that, there are some other issues that are kind of nail in the coffin for a looter shooter. Specifically, I don't know if you saw that. Well, I think you did see this. So there's a mission chain you can do where you will eventually unlock the Mega Hive, which is the gauntlet that they showcased in the last war table. That mission has I believe, the highest chance of spawning you an exotic piece of gear. Now,
Mm.
the issue is that if you spawn an exotic piece of gear, you're locked out of getting another one for some reason. It's not intentional. They have said, hey, we're aware of this. But for many people that are already at endgame, like the high level stuff, they're kind of discouraged from just like playing the game at all right now if the high level content like a Mega Hive is not going to give them a chance of getting an exotic. So like I can sympathize with that. The rate I've been playing the game, I haven't gotten too much of that stuff yet. I know you're a lot closer to the grind from like 140 to 150 right now.
Yeah. It's just disappointing for early
Mm-hmm.
adopters. Games like this always work out in the end. Well, I wouldn't say always, but generally, if they get better at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
game. Battlefront 2, for example, is a great example of a game that had a terrible launch. This game obviously didn't, and it worked out and became a much better game by the end
Yeah.
of it because of the improvements. This will follow a similar trajectory, I imagine, considering that it's Marvel's Avengers and Square Enix and Crystal Dynamics are going to work to sort of uphold that name, which holds a lot of weight, specifically for a casual audience. So there's going to be a lot of improvements and updates to this game, so it will get better. It just sucks for early adopters,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
and we're gonna get to information about the story, but I think for me personally, I think that the story I got, the experience I got out of that was worth it for getting it for me. And just to back up your point about it's Marvel's Avengers, they're not gonna drop it, right? Like Square Enix also publishes and develops the Final Fantasy series. Final Fantasy 14 is an MMO that launched, I want to say, in 2012 or 2013. And it was one of the worst launches for a multiplayer focused game ever. And they did a full reboot essentially. I don't know if they charged it for the people who bought in day one, but like they did like basically a 2.0. I think it was actually a new 1.0. It was called a Realm Reborn. So like they really went on being like, hey, we want to support the people that took a chance on us and give them an experience that is worth their time and money. And they did that, and now Final Fantasy 14, like people are leaving World of Warcraft to play Final Fantasy 14. So like I think if anything, Square as a publisher is not scared of abandoning a game called Marvel's Avengers.
Yeah, like we can expect this to get better, and it is unfortunate, but like the nature of games as a service games is that they launch with certain expectations, and then the community essentially shapes the
Yeah.
game. So they work to improve the game based on the community feedback. So generally, like these games do launch with a lot of issues that are resolved
Mm-hmm.
eventually. So if you're listening to this and you're waiting on this game, um, you might want to wait a little bit more.
Yeah.
If you're fine with sort of the bugs and glitches and things not working out as people expected, then that's fine. I came in this game with like super lowered expectations, and I came out with it so far being exceeding my expectations. I really enjoy this game
Mm-hmm.
right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I think honestly, even at the rate they've been talking about getting information out there, at the rate they've been like shifting priorities. Okay, what's the most important thing for us to fix right now? What does the community really need? I honestly think if you want to just wait until November or December, you'll have two more heroes. You'll have more story content. Like if you're really tepid, maybe just wait till then, and you can probably pick it up for a slightly discounted price. Like I think if you did really want to get in right now, I don't think it's a bad idea. Depending on what your schedule's like, what your fall looks like for other games. But yeah, I think getting it still year one, I don't think is going to be a bad idea because bugs aside, in terms of like graphical issues or game crashing, I think it is, again, one of the stronger games as a service launches in terms of content and bang for your buck, I guess, that I've experienced so far. And I've played Destiny, Destiny 2, The Division 2. So I think starting out, it's in a really good place. So,
Yeah, I'll echo what you said. Like, if you want to wait till the end of the game, till the end of the year, like around the holiday season, you'll probably get it for cheap. Like, I could see a world where it's around
yeah,
maybe
I think 40
40
is safe.
around there. And honestly, I can guarantee you'll get a better game than it is right
Yeah.
now. Just with like the promise, at least if they uphold their promises, of the constant updates and the constant additions of characters and stuff. Like you'll have a better experience, I'm sure, than if you played it now. If you're worried about it, I can guarantee you that for around $40, you can't go
Yeah,
wrong
for sure.
around the holiday season.
Now, we have recently learned as well that in addition to updating us on patch notes, additionally on the Play Avengers subreddit, where Crystal Dynamics developers are very active, that's where I have been pulling show notes the past few weeks in terms of the updates straight from Crystal themselves. We also know that every week now we're going to have the War Table blog, which is going to be updated on avengers.squareenixgames.com. This week, the War Table Weekly blog for the week of September 10th. We have an update about weekly missions, priority missions, modifiers for them, priority harm challenges, modifiers for those, pro tips about the modifiers, marketplace updates. This is not something unique to this game. Again, if you're coming to this from Destiny, if you've been experienced with the weekly refresh of a game like Destiny, this is very familiar. Every week with Destiny, at least with Destiny 2 this generation, they post a what's new for the weekly missions like the Nightfall, the heroic Nightfall, the modifiers for that. So this is essentially that.
Yeah, just basically telling you like new missions and what to expect. I'm not super familiar with that sort of
Mm-hmm.
Destiny model because I wasn't like I played Destiny 1 and then was done with it probably
Mm-hmm.
after a month. This game definitely will have its hooks in me, so I guess I'll start to
Yeah.
learn, and I'll be able to better speak to that. But right now, I'm just
Yeah,
starting to
so
get
let me
into
give
it.
you a little bit of a rundown then on what you can expect in terms of what the weekly reset is like. So for the priority missions, they say priority missions have modifiers that will challenge even the toughest hero. Your first weekly completion of these missions earns you unique gear you won't find anywhere else. So for the priority missions this week, there are two of them. The first one is Global Presence, which is the low power level priority mission. It has the modifiers of Blizzard, Capacitor, and Famine. Blizzard obviously would be adding ice hazards to the environment. Cryo damage deals more to your heroes. Capacitor is shock damage from players being increased. So Thor, you're gonna have a good time. Famine, enemies do not drop regen packs when they're defeated. So then you'd have to be scouting more for the tubes of health, you know. And the guaranteed reward is a hero specific gear for whoever you run the mission with, as well as Polycoron, which I think for you, Jack, is pretty like a hot commodity for your 140 grind.
Yeah. So what the Polycoron does is it you get these major artifacts. So you have two minor artifact slots, and they're basically used to like bolster your ratings up top. And then there's the major artifact, which bolsters your power level. So it starts at 1, and that 1 will increase your power level by 1 entire point, and eventually goes up to 10. And to upgrade that, you need these polycorons, which are very rare to come by. And the best way to get them is to do the assignments given by Shield and
Mm-hmm.
the Inhumans, the faction leaders. And that's basically how you combine them. So they're pretty rare. You have to come back each day to get them. You can't really farm them in any other way. So this is cool that you can go into a specific mission and also get that
Yeah,
reward.
and I would have to imagine that since it is like the weekly mission for priority, you'll probably get like a handful of them. I don't think it'll just be one. You know, like maybe it's three or something. But
Yeah, I've noticed that I've also been like trying to do some upgrade modules, which is very important for high level gear. That's actually how you upgrade your high
Hmm.
level gear. When a mission says you'll get a singular one, usually means a few. So I imagine this is probably you'll get a few polycorns
Yeah,
as
yeah,
well.
I think that's a safe bet. And priority mission will give you, I'm assuming, because I haven't done a priority mission chain yet for a weekly reset. The low level one says it gives you Polycoron. The high level one this week is Rocket's Red Glare, which I believe is the iconic mission for Cap. Do you know off the top of your head if that's that?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay. Um, well, the modifiers for that are Famine, which again, no dropping regens, Pressure, which means no automatic recovery of willpower when you're critically injured, Clash, melee damage from any source is greatly increased, Capacitor, once again, shock damage from players is increased. The guaranteed reward there is Epic Gear. So while the low level one just gives you hero specific gear at any tier level, the high level priority mission for the week will give you some epic gear for probably any hero, it seems. It doesn't seem like it's specified to whatever hero you run.
Yeah, I think it's just whoever you bring into it will get that gear.
Yeah. So the blog also breaks down the harm challenge updates. If you play through it this week, you get an Incredible Hulk comic. But basically, that's the gist of what the weekly refresh is going to be. It's going to say, okay, here's a mission you've probably already played before if you've been burning through a lot of the end game content. With these modifiers, so maybe you can't do this, maybe you can do that. This is a more challenging stack of modifiers that in the high level one, maybe it's heavily weighted against you, so the rewards will be better. Next week, the two missions are going to be different missions. So that's what the weekly reset is like.
Yeah, I actually haven't been messing and paying attention with the sort of modifiers,
Mm-hmm.
but now that that's in this update, I will probably pay attention slightly more.
Mm-hmm.
I bet like once the game goes on, that will become more important. Like you'll have your specific gear loadouts based on the modifiers,
Mm-hmm.
but right now I haven't really been paying attention.
Yeah, yeah. So I think it's just gonna become more of a routine every week. That's how Destiny was for me, at least when I was really on top of it. Um, yeah, so that's pretty much what the weekly reset looks like. We also saw a refresh of the marketplace earlier. Did you get a chance to look through anything yet?
Briefly, I didn't. So I looked at the vendor. I
Okay.
don't know if I checked out the marketplace.
Yeah, I went into the marketplace. I saw there was a new outfit for Thor. Yeah, Thor, Tony, Widow, and some new emotes. Honestly, I'm still a little underwhelmed by the marketplace offerings in terms of costumes. They haven't shown me one yet that I'd want to spend my microtransaction currency on. So I don't know what they have to do to like really grab me with something. Like I don't know. There's just nothing that stood out to me. Again, as a Thor main, I haven't really seen anything that is like spend money on me. You know?
Yeah, honestly, like in a way, I'm kind of glad. I don't
Oh
want to
yeah.
feel like I have to spend, money. Of course, it's optional because it's just cosmetics, but
Right.
I have a feeling they will do this because why wouldn't they? Like
Mm-hmm.
eventually lock behind that paywall, like the really best cosmetic items, which I'm worried about. But right now, it seems like nothing's really caught my eye, like what you've been saying. So I'm kind of fine with it right now.
Mm-hmm.
But again, like if you go through the challenge cards enough, you will accrue enough of that currency to have like at your leisure. So eventually, it'll be like if I want a skin, then I'll just grab one. But
Right. I
probably not for a while.
I don't know if you saw this. I didn't look at it. I don't think the image is out there, but somebody found a Santa skin for the Hulk in the code.
Oh, that's awesome.
So man, you just know the Halloween, the Christmas skins, they're gonna be great.
That is worth keeping an eye out for.
Mm-hmm.
Keeping the credits open.
Definitely. Um, so we touched on this briefly, but just to check the pulse a little bit, my Thor currently, my main, he's a level 48. Power level, I think I left off around 70. My two closest after that are Cap and Widow. They're both level 25. This week, in terms of what content I've been playing, it's mostly, honestly, most of my playtime was on stream last Tuesday with you for the group stream on youtube.com/joyclicks. And that's when I did my first hive. So the hive has basically been what I've done this week. I've done a couple more hives since then, but I haven't messed around with anything else yet. Still have yet to start any of the iconic mission chains, but I do like the setup of the hives because when I've played through them, I think we had this question on Tuesday. It does seem like it is a random mismatch of what puzzles or what challenges you have to do on each floor. So I like that. It gives some sense of non-repetitive stuff despite the environments being the same.
Yeah, it is repetitive because you'll just eventually do the same stuff over and over again, but it is random in terms of the drop zones that you actually do. So there's, to describe it, there's 6 floors for the hive. So basically you're just running through an AIM facility, and each floor is its own drop zone. So it's like, guard these 3 areas for a certain amount of time, protect these scientists for a certain amount of time, defeat the squad of enemies, and like those are the sort of missions or like floors you can expect to do.
Right.
But it's all completely random.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually you will just keep doing the same stuff.
Mm-hmm. And you've still been maining Tony, right?
Yep, I'm an Iron Man main. I am a level 50.
Nice.
And
Congrats.
I think, thank you. I think I am power level 144, I want to say.
Damn, dude. Good job.
Thank you. I'm in the 140s. It's taken once you get to, so to describe like the gear a little bit, the highest amount of gear drops you'll get is 130. Mm-hmm. That's like the highest level gear drops at. And at that point, it's just a point of preference of what gear you want to use to like bolster some of your ratings. I'm focusing on ranged and defense, so my melee isn't that great, but like my lasers and missiles and repulsors are excellent. Mm-hmm. So I'm like more of a sniper build, but so you'll get the 130 gear, and then you have to upgrade that gear. And once you get 130, you need upgrade modules, which you kind of have to grind for. And again, like the polychorons, you have to go back day by day to get. You get these DNA keys, which will unlock these certain loot boxes that get you these upgrade modules. It's very cumbersome. Mm-hmm. It's kind of annoying. So it takes a really long time to actually like get to 150. And I think I have one legendary gear slot left to upgrade to 140. And then I have my minor artifacts to upgrade to 140. And then eventually with my polychorons, I'll get my major artifact to be 150. Hopefully by next week, I'm sure I'll get that. It is slightly a grind though. But yeah, that's what basically I've been doing, trying to get those materials. Again, you have to go back day by day to actually do it, mm-hmm. So it is kind of annoying. But I've also been playing slightly, like a little bit today, of Black Widow. Nice. I did her iconic quest line, and she is, I think, like a level 17 and like a level 23 power rating, which is like a vast disparity. Yeah. But she's going to be my, backup. Mm-hmm. Also worth noting, Christian, I have some tips out there for some people.
Oh, let's hear it.
So I was trying to like keep up with the challenge cards, even with the characters I don't use, because I think it's a good way to get like materials in there. Like there are some upgrade modules, and there is some like the blue currency that you can spend mm-hmm. in there as well. And so there's the dailies and weeklies, of course. And I found the best way to do those quickly is in the harm room missions, okay. Specifically in the training for particular characters. So, for example, like for Black Widow yesterday, the weekly for me was parrying 50 attacks. And the best way I found was to go in her training mission. And there's like waves. The very first wave of the training mission was perfect dodging 3 attacks. So I completely avoided that. There's only one enemy. There's no other allies to help you. and I just used their attack to parry 50 times. It took under 5 minutes or something like that. So instead of like going in a war zone or like messing around with like the AI, like the allies who honestly steal a lot of the kills that you need
Yeah.
to do that,
Uh-huh.
you're just put in there by yourself and you can just do whatever the task asks you to. And a lot of times like you can defeat like the waves of enemies and then reload the checkpoint quickly so you don't progress,
Mm-hmm.
and you can just keep farming that over and over again. So that's the best way I found to do those, and I did them all like within the same play session, so it's possible to do that.
That's really good to know. And as somebody who, again, really hasn't been messing with many people outside of Thor in terms of getting in the weeds with it, like I played Cap, for just for fun, to get him leveled at least. But in terms of the challenges, yeah, that's a really good idea, honestly. And I think I might. I'm planning on playing after we record today. I might just do that this afternoon, so that way I can keep on top of their challenge cards, like you said, for the resources, but also for the credits. Because ideally, I would like to have some spending money from these challenge cards on top of being able to buy the character pass for Kate. So, yeah, that might be what I do.
Yeah, and I would definitely. So I believe the weeklies reset in a day or two.
Okay.
Over the weekend it will. So it's definitely good to like stay on top of the weeklies, even for the characters you don't really care for,
Mm-hmm.
because like you'll get 22 points and that'll progress like decently.
Yeah.
Um, it is sort of annoying, like to fully max out your character. I was doing the math on this,
Mm-hmm.
and I was listening to other podcasts who were saying the same thing. If you go day by day and do all the dailies and do all the weeklies, it'll take 3 weeks to fully max out a challenge card, which is kind of annoying
Yeah.
because you do have to go back over and over. But that's sort of the game incentivizing you to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But granted, for a $60 game, I don't love that, but that's just the nature of how it is, unfortunately. So that's good to keep in mind. It will take a while.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think that wraps up Fury's report and our little multiplayer update for the week. So I think it's time we talk about the story a little bit, get into some spoiler talk, overall
Let's do
impressions
it.
about the campaign. So, listeners, if you have not beaten the campaign and you care, come back once you beat the campaign. If you don't care, if you beat the campaign, Agents of Excelsior, let's squad up. Let's just talk about this campaign right now because, man, I really liked it a lot.
This was the best surprise this year
Yeah.
in gaming.
Mm-hmm.
I did not expect, like, going into this game, the campaign was the thing I was like, oh, it's not going to be good. Like, I know it. The multiplayer will, maybe save it, hopefully, but I know the campaign will not be good. I was so surprised by how much I liked it.
Yeah, man. Like, I think a lot of it, at least from what I've seen on other people that have been pretty positive on it, is rooted in Kamala, and I think that is correct.
100%.
We touched on it last week because we talked about the first 3 hours of the game last week. I think all that still reigns true of like Kamala is what brings out the unique aspects about each Avenger in this take on the universe because we get to see them interact with her in a way we don't really see the MCU Avengers like act with anybody or even other comics that you and I have experienced. So I think that she is able to extract a lot of freshness out of these takes on the characters. Obviously, focusing it on her story, seeing her take on the responsibilities of becoming a hero, being the glue of this team, is really charming, and I think everything about her portrayal, I think, is fantastic. So, loved it.
Yeah, and to a lot of people, like myself included, she's a brand new character, even though she has been around in comics recently, and that's obviously where she was introduced.
Right.
To a lot of people, and to a lot of people who are specifically coming at Marvel from the MCU, she's a brand new character. And it is really great to see the game through her eyes because, like we said last week, she's essentially like the lens for the audience.
Mm-hmm.
She basically speaks for the audience. And they nail that so well because she comes at it from such like a fan's perspective, and she always like keeps her faith in the Avengers, which is, of course, that is just the fans, obviously.
Right.
And it's really great to have her in this sort of role because I don't think anyone expected this. I think we knew that she was going to be in the game, but she is pretty much the focus of this game. It really is a Kamala story with the Avengers who happen to be there.
Yeah, and I think I saw a fear online, mostly launch week when people were still hearing the positivity, not necessarily sold in the game yet, of like, oh, it's great that this is such a focus on her, but I have to imagine as the Avengers come in, it gets less about her and more about the team, and like they overshadow her. No, dude. Like, I think because of what her role is in terms of getting this new take on the other characters across and everything you just said, like, I even when there were opportunities in the final missions of the game for me to pick anybody, including Thor, for the story missions, I was like, no, I want to play Kamala because this is her thing. I'm invested in her take on all this. I think I tried Cap once, maybe for a drop zone, but like, yeah, that entire campaign, outside of the times where they forced you to play a different character, I was pretty much only Kamala.
I'll push back on that a little
Okay.
bit, because I would like they would basically like tell you to play as certain characters, and I would, and I think around the time when you get Iron Man back, it kind of grinded to a halt for a little bit, for me at least.
Sure.
You would do
Yeah.
like there was that one mission where you had to fly as Iron Man and get the stuff, and there was less of a focus on Kamala, which is where it sort of drew me back a little bit.
Okay.
And so all the moments where Kamala wasn't the star of it, which is funny to say now because I didn't expect that, I didn't like that. And it wasn't until like the very end of that game, there was like sort of that middling section where Kamala wasn't sort of the focus.
Mm-hmm.
And they did tie it back at the end, but there was sort of the middle section where I didn't enjoy the pacing as much as the beginning or the end.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair. Yeah. I think. Let me rephrase what I said. Yeah. Like with the times where they forced you to play the other Avengers, I thought like I still kind of felt her influence in a way just because of like the way Iron Man was acting, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, she is for a little bit in the middle, not directly involved. She's still around, but
Yeah.
it's still at the end of the day for me when I did have to play as Iron Man for that arc or for Thor in that mission. Like that just felt like a side thing to me. Like it didn't feel like that was the main focus.
Yeah, it was like a main thing that you had to do, but it did feel like a side
Yeah.
mission, and that I think was sort of the issue I took with
Okay.
it, where it didn't feel integral to the story,
Mm-hmm.
and it felt more like the multiplayer missions that you play,
Yeah.
like sort of the drop zoney stuff, and I was like, this doesn't really feel. This kind of feels a little tacked on. But that was sort of my main issue with it, and I think overall the general through line plot wasn't what kept me going. It was more Kamala's story and sort of the very personal and very small connections between the characters. Specifically, like everyone's connection to Kamala, I felt was genuine, and I think that was the backbone of this game.
Yeah. I'm with you. The story, from just a narrative perspective, I didn't really care. Like, I think for so long we all just knew what was going to happen. We knew Captain America was not dead. We knew he was going to come back. We knew the Avengers were going to reassemble. But the things that kept me going, like you said, it was Kamala and it was also just the characters. Because I don't know if this is a hot take, maybe, but I liked everyone. Like, I liked, for the Avengers, the core team, I liked all of them. I thought they had a really, in some ways, obviously there's some influence of the other interpretations we've seen, but I felt like they all brought at least one thing fresh to these characters, and I really liked their interplay between each other with Kamala. I really liked the sort of friction between Bruce and Tony that was hinted at in the comics before we even got the game, right? Like seeing them go in there, especially when you go to Tony's trailer and you get to that interaction with them. I really liked their relationship, and just the Avengers as a whole. I liked their each take on them.
I think the only character that I didn't think got as much as the other characters was
Yeah,
Thor.
dude.
He, which is unfortunate. Granted, though, I don't love this interpretation of Thor. It is very sort of cliche in a way, which I know that's what they're going for because play through A Day and it's just like, luckily I am mighty. It's obviously very tongue in
Yeah.
cheek, which is fine. I think Marvel has always had an issue with interpreting Thor. Like, how do you balance the comedic aspects with also like the Norse mythology and all that kind of stuff? So it has been a difficult thing to balance, and I don't think they nail it in this game particularly, specifically because he's really not in this game at all. When you think about
Yeah.
it, he has that one mission, and then the Avengers disband for like a hot second, and then he comes back, and that's really the only time you play as him.
So that honestly, just because of thinking about other games as a service things, like I wonder if they were reserved with the Thor story because maybe Thor plays a bigger role in an expansion at some point. Like,
I'm sure that has something to do with it.
yeah, like are we gonna eventually go to Asgard at one point and it's a Thor story? Like, I don't know. So I could see something like that. I definitely walked away kind of surprised how little Thor was in it, considering Captain America was dead. um,
Yeah. And that's actually worth mentioning now. Like, that, of course, that wasn't a surprise. Obviously, Captain America was going to come back in some way. And the way that they revealed it, where AIM had captured him and brought him to a satellite, I think I mentioned to you, I was like, oh man, they're going to capture him, aren't they? And, like, obviously it's very predictable, but the way that that mission played out and Tony going to rescue him and finally seeing him and not even realizing he was alive. There was that one moment where he's like, oh, it's probably some inhuman.
Right.
And obviously, of course, it turns out to be Captain America. I felt like that interaction was so
yeah,
heartfelt
man.
and so genuine. And even though it wasn't the MCU actors we knew, it felt like Iron Man and Cap, you know? And that mission in particular was probably my favorite.
Yeah, that was really good. I really loved that mission a lot. Like, just dude, everything about everything about that mission. Like the lead up to it, the white suit, the white and gold, getting the music, shooting straight up into space, like doing that little on. It was on rails, but it was still fun.
Yeah.
Cutting to the Tony Stark HUD display that we always see, in the movies, like doing it one time in the campaign, and it was this moment when he's flying into space, and then you're Iron Man in a space station that's abandoned. It was like kind of creepy, but like it was really cool. And then, yeah, I think you nailed it with just saying it was heartfelt. Like it had real emotion in it in a way that I'm just glad they made it work because we all knew he was alive, but I think they surprised me with it still. Like, not in a way that, oh, I didn't see this coming. It was just like, man, this hit in a way I didn't think it would, knowing since day one this dude was alive still.
Yeah, and I think something they do great with Captain America in this is they keep his shield in the helicarrier or in the the helicarrier, and everyone at some point can go up to it and be like and reflect on Captain America and essentially reflect on A-Day and their failures, and it's particularly like emotional because they failed not just like the world and the people they were trying to protect. They also failed
Yeah.
themselves. Specifically with Captain America's death. Like that's all a burden that they kept on their shoulders for 5 years. And that's part of I can guarantee you that's a large part of the reason why Bruce Banner came out there and said the Avengers do pose a danger. Because he probably didn't want to see another one of his friends die. That's like an interpretation I took away from it. Obviously, of course, they let a lot of people die that
Right.
day, but for the Avengers themselves, like having their emotional leader essentially in Captain America be taken away from them was just catastrophic. And I think they they use that as a great leverage for making the Avengers disband. It made sense that way.
Yeah, and I really liked that a lot too because I think that here more than any other interpretation I've exposed myself to, like it feels like Cap is the head, right? Like he's the head of a snake, not a hydra, I guess. Like they cut it off and then the Avengers clueless. Even when they reunite,
Mm-hmm.
Cap is still not there. They're struggling hard. Like I really liked that a lot. I like this take on Cap. I think it's a nice balance of like cheesy Captain America, but also heartfelt. And like you said about every time I got the shield, or every time I got a new character on the helicarrier, I went up to the shield to see what their dialogue was going to be with it.
Definitely.
Um, and you reminded me after the game is, I guess, complete and everybody's back on the helicarrier. You can similarly, if you're not playing as Thor, you can go into Thor's room and you can try with everybody to pick up Mjolnir.
Ooh,
So
can you?
yeah, so they have like fun little interactions with it. There's a nice nod with if you do it with Cap. So I
That's
like
cool.
the Easter eggs in this game.
Yeah, there are some cool ones. I didn't see this personally, but Cap has a Peggy photo in
Oh
his,
really?
presumably Peggy, because
Mm-hmm.
it's a woman from the 40s, so obviously like it would have to be.
Right.
Um, Natasha has the tiny dancer, or the little like dancer.
Yeah.
I
The
forget what that's
music
called.
box.
Yeah, the music box. Thanks. And
Did
that's
you
where
see
she.
Tiny Dancer coming?
I was either thinking it was. I thought it would be really funny if it was Captain America, where he was like doing the Winter Soldier thing, like he was catching up on like pop culture, and he
Yeah.
stumbled upon Tiny Dancer, and it's
Yeah.
like, oh, I like this song. I thought that would be really funny, but
Yeah.
I didn't see that. I thought it was either Cap or like maybe not, but the explanation for Tiny Dancer wasn't the song; it was the music box, which was like, no, okay, didn't.
Mm-hmm.
I like the sort of interplay with Iron Man earlier, where he was like, "Oh, I would have chosen Rocket Man," and then Nat comes back and he's like ragging on her for choosing Tiny Dancer. She's like,
Mm-hmm.
"I bet you would have chosen Rocket Man." He's like, "No."
Yeah.
So I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah. Yes. Like all the moments like that, I loved. I really appreciated all that stuff. Um, I also wanted to shout out to Banner. I loved Banner in this. I loved this take on Bruce. Like he felt more raw than other interpretations. I really like he was just super depressed in a way
Oh,
that
incredibly.
felt more genuine than any Hulk movie or cartoon that I've seen. Like this man was going through it. Like and the fact that it's reflected in the Hulk too, I thought was really interesting. There's a mission before you meet Hank where you're in Utah. I was playing as Kamala, and I think she's talking to Jarvis, and she asks him a question about the Hulk. She's like, "Why is he so like bruised and like beat up? He looks worse." And during that mission, I was using the pre-order skin for Hulk, which had like the lab coat and the purple pants. But hearing her call out specifically the appearance of him, me questioning if it's actually gotten worse, I was like, oh, you know what? Hulk, you're getting the default skin for the rest of this game. I want to see what happens here. I want to see when you shave, because that's going to be a moment. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was really interesting. And another take on the whole conflict between Hulk and Banner that felt new to me.
Yeah, and I always point out like some of the A-list voice actors that we see or hear, I guess, time and time again. They usually kind of just repeat, their own voice, and Troy Baker does that to an extent, but I think he captures the sort of awkwardness of Bruce Banner that we haven't seen specifically in the MCU.
Mm-hmm.
Like a little bit with Mark Ruffalo, but he's sort of more playful in that role.
Yeah.
And you could tell that Troy Baker is much more introspective, and he can't really talk to people effectively. Like his communication skills are poor, like really bad. Specifically in the scene with Kamala and Banner in her room, he's like, "I don't know how to confront this situation. I'm just gonna leave."
Yeah.
I thought that was well handled, and Yeah, like what you're saying, like he's just carrying that baggage, probably even more so than any of the other Avengers. Maybe, Tony's up there as well, but like he's the one who chose to say we don't need the Avengers. And you can like tell that the rest of the Avengers didn't necessarily agree with that. But he's the one who said, "No, we need to stop." And a lot of that I think was because of his research with Terrigen and how he probably felt responsible for what happened that day.
Yeah, because even on top of that, he has his thing with Monica, right? And Monica, as it turns out, is I would argue the real antagonist, right? Like she's the
She
brains
is
behind it
definitely.
all. I had a theory that she was a Kree, and that might be true, but yeah. What do you think of Modoc? Because I was kind of indifferent.
Yeah, he's exactly what I expected him to be. Is just okay, like you're bad for just being bad. Like I didn't get the turn from doctor to evil super genius. I
Yeah.
didn't get that,
Mm-hmm.
and I agree with you. Like Monica was the real villain behind this,
Mm-hmm.
and Modoc was more like the tool that she used,
Right. Like
seemingly.
I expected more from Modoc. When we checked in their lab like the second time, and she injected him, I think at that point I was like, okay, so we're not gonna get any Tarleton character development in this game, are we?
No.
And the next time we check in on them, his head is just bigger, and it's like, oh, we're really not gonna get any. Okay, so
Yeah, I remember the first war table they showed him, and I was like, "Oh man,
yeah,
I don't need this." But again, that was sort of the thing that lost me about the story. But anything with Kamala and the rest of the Avengers, honestly, really um, outweighed that for me.
yeah, definitely. So
Do you want to talk about the Kree a little bit? Like,
yeah,
what do you expect from that? Because we see the Kree sort of sentry appear out of um, the water or whatever in San Francisco, which is like presumably that's what was unearthed
mm-hmm.
on A Day, and that's what like sort of caused all that
Right.
stuff. And then at the end of it, we see something shooting out of its chest, presumably to go to the Kree homeworld.
Yes.
What do you expect from this? And is it Captain Marvel?
So I absolutely think Captain Marvel's coming. Um, I don't think at any point in the story did they call Kamala Ms. Marvel.
I have heard people discussing that. I don't think someone ever says it.
Okay.
It's written, of course, and like on her character, it is
Yeah,
Ms. Marvel. But yeah, I don't think anyone ever says it.
because I believe she gets the name from Carol. So
Yeah, she does.
yeah, I'm wondering then if whenever Captain Marvel gets added to the game, because we know that's coming, um,
Hmm.
if it's a Kamala and Carol story, which would be awesome. But yeah, I think she's coming for sure. I think the little tease of the thing flying out of the ship at the end is absolutely teeing up a future content drop. I don't know if that's going to be a year two thing or like a year one 2021 thing or if it's going to be sooner. I would lean to say sooner because, again, we're going to touch on a couple rumored things right now. So if you're sensitive about that, maybe just skip like 2 minutes. Um, the next raid, presumably because of leaks, is Wakanda. Now, the raid we have for launch is an AIM secret lab. I don't know if anybody's completed yet. I don't even know if it's available yet because I think they said only weekends, but I doubt there's any Kree information in the AIM secret lab raid. So I would be inclined to think that maybe when we assume we get Black Panther, which based on nothing other than the fact that we're getting a character next month and a character the month after, is maybe December. So I could see come December that Kree ship or Kree scout that fled the body of that Sentinel come back with an army and we duke it out in Wakanda.
Yeah, I can see something big happening around the holiday season specifically to drive sales of this game,
Mm-hmm.
because it is sort of like an active game being constantly updated, and they're gonna want to like try to sell this game at certain points, obviously for the holiday season, and like they're gonna want to drive sales again. Like they saw a peak for this on launch day, obviously, and they're gonna try and reach another peak around Christmas and like that sort of holiday season. So I can see something big happening there to drive incentive to buy this game. So yeah, I could totally see something. If Wakanda comes, I can see that coming in December,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that'll be. I mean, it's hard to even say, but that'll be enough time where it's not awkward to sort of use that character or insensitive to use that character
Yeah.
or Wakanda as much as it is now that the wound is so fresh.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're right. Like, honestly, when I think they show the character, I think they reveal Black Panther at the next war table. Whether that's in 2 weeks, if that's at the end of October, I don't know, but I think they'll announce Black Panther before Clint is out. That's my guess.
I agree. I agree.
So that's where my head was at with the Kree thing. I think there's also a tease in the post credits with Monica, like with the eyes. You picked up on that, right?
Yes, like so supposedly she can clone or something like that.
Yeah, because it kind of seems like she died, right? Like,
I don't know. The whole Monica stuff is kind of convoluted to me.
hmm. So
So I'm not sure.
my read on it was, well, originally when they introduced her on A Day, I was like, damn, she's got green eyes, like because it's just so in your face. I didn't know why. At first I thought she was She Hulk, and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
cool. Is she just in here as a cameo? Turns out no.
Was that your theory at first?
Well, when I first saw her until like Bruce kissed her, so for those like 30 seconds, I was like, oh, maybe is it She Hulk?
Yeah.
But at some point in the campaign, I think when she injects MODOK, I noticed her eyes. She had heterochromia, so there was one like brown and one green. I was like, wait, no, they were both green before. And then in the post-credit scene, they're both green. So I don't know what that means.
Yeah, what's the deal with
Do
that?
Kree have green eyes? I don't think they do. Jan Rog, right? Jude Law's character, they were yellow, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, I have no clue. But the whole the main mission line in the Avengers initiative, like in the multiplayer, is following up with Monica.
Mm-hmm.
So she definitely still plays a role.
Yeah, because the
What that will be, I don't
right
know.
the entire post credit scene is Monica talking to shareholders in like in a room with tubes of people just sitting in like Luke Skywalker back to tanks,
Yeah.
and we zoom in on her eyes, and she's like, "Don't worry, the projections will be met," or something, some business talk, right? Like so.
Let me tell you, I'm excited to quickly move on past this because I'm more excited for what's the year two
Yes,
storyline because right now I'm just like whatever.
I'm with you. AIM is a good launch thing, right? Like, I don't think AIM is grand scheme. I don't think. I'm sure there's going to be AIM missions throughout the different years, but I don't think it's going to be like end all be all. Round two with AIM 5 years from now. Like, I don't think that's what this is, right?
Yeah, I think I could see a world where even all the enemies are replaced with another faction or there's a cycle between the two, something like that.
Yeah, I think that would be nice. Because while there is a lot, they said like what 80 enemy types in the game. That counts like the same drone but different elemental versions of it.
Yeah.
And it is a bummer because I guess we can touch briefly on future stuff, right? Because that's what this game is. We have a lot of loose ends. I feel like this game would be really cool if we eventually got Ultron, but we fought so many robots in the base campaign that I feel like Ultron's not going to hit the same. I do think they tease it a little bit with Hank and his AI Roy robot. So
Mm-hmm.
I think we could eventually see Ultron, but I don't know. When it comes to you with villains or where you're expecting some of these threads to go, once AIM is wrapped, whenever that happens, what do you think's next?
Yeah, I'm honestly
Mm-hmm.
unsure. My mind goes to Ultron because I think that's probably easiest, and I don't think they want to do. They definitely don't want to do Thanos yet. That is like
That
an eventual thing, and they don't want to come off the heels
yeah.
of the MCU, right? They're trying to do their own thing. But as I say that, like Ultron was a huge part of that, so I'm not sure about that. I could see maybe something regarding. I think the Kree will play a very important part, and I think Captain Marvel will also be with that. So I think something along those lines is the next big thing.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And someone was talking about this. I think it was maybe on Kind of Funny. Um, if they introduce that, maybe also introduce like an intergalactic thing with the Guardians of the Galaxy. That'd be
Mm-hmm.
awesome. I could totally see myself playing Peter Quill if he's anything like Tony, which I'm sure he'll be. That'll be like sort of an echo for Tony, so that'd be cool.
Sure, yeah. I Here's my thing. You brought up the Guardians, so I'm gonna bring this up. Uh, Everyone was like, "Is this gonna be a Marvel Games universe? Is this Spider-Man from Insomniac gonna show up?" No, but I do think that because there were rumors that Eidos Montreal was making a Guardians of the Galaxy game, and Crystal Dynamics, both under the Square Enix umbrella, is making this game, that I think at one point maybe we get a Guardians of the Galaxy game on PS5 from Square and Eidos. I think those Guardians have a very strong chance of showing up in this game, and that's the sort of universe you build.
That's some good corporate synergy right there.
Yeah, dude, introduce one of the Guardians. On Gamescast with Kevin, we did like a dream roadmap a couple weeks before we started Excelsior again,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, you know what would be cool? Because I know they like to make a couple differences, right? Like they made Kamala a central Avenger in this game. I would love, because he's an OG Guardian, if we get like young Yondu as like one of the core Guardians members and he's the
Oh
guest
yeah,
character in this game.
dude, the arrow flying around, that would be
Yeah.
something.
Yeah,
That'd be a
man.
great heroic.
Because I think he could probably control it similar to how Thor does a Mjolnir. So I think it would be closer to Thor than it would be with like a Hawkeye or something.
Yep, totally. That'd be awesome.
So yeah, put Yondu in the game, please. um, but yeah, any final thoughts before we close the book on Excelsior for the week? Anything about the
Yeah,
story? Any predictions?
sure. I was thinking of like throwing my general impression out there.
Yeah, sure.
If you want to do the same.
Yeah, why
Um,
not?
so I was thinking like we're not gonna slap a score on this thing because that's just not what we do. But to like garner my sort of like ideas about this, I was thinking what I would give this if I were like reviewing this and like how I feel about this. And I was reading through the IGN review score. They do the 10-point scale, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way up to 10.
Mm-hmm.
And I was reading through sort of the descriptions, and I felt this one was very accurate. It reads, "Playing a good game is time well spent. Could it be better? Absolutely. Maybe it lacks ambition, is too repetitive, has a few technical bumps in the road, or is too repetitive." I like that.
Mm-hmm.
But we came away from it happy nonetheless. We think you will too. That is the descriptor for 7 out of 10, which is good.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is like very accurate to how I feel. There were definitely some noticeable bugs in this game. It was incredibly repetitive, and there were some things that got in my way of making me feel that this was a great experience. But regardless, I came away with it more positive than I came away with it more negative. So I feel like this is a really good game,
Mm-hmm.
and that's sort of how I feel about this.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to lay it out. If I had to put a score on it, I think just in comparison to other scores I've given, not necessarily based on like a full scale, I'd probably land around an 8, maybe 8.5, just because I really, really think the story's great. And at this point, seeing what they showed me with this base game, the fun I've had with the gameplay, the combat, the multiplayer, and the promise of future content, and if the future content is a shred of like well put together as that main story is, when we get like Kate or Clint or Spider-Man or whoever else comes to this game, then I can't wait. And I think this is going to be another excellent companion piece to being a Marvel fan. Like, when the MCU is taking some time, I can just dive in on what's new in this world, like see what's up with the new character, what their place is in this whole thing. Like, I think I agree with you where it does have some stuff to make up, but I think the reason I'd probably put an 8 on it or something like that is because of the promise, because I think it's hard to definitively say something about a game like this, right? You can only take it with how it is at this point, but I think it has a very promising road ahead of it, and I am giving them the benefit of the doubt with that for now, because I think they proved that there's a lot they can do really well.
Yeah, that's a good point. But I think like as it stands right now, like
Sure, yeah.
specifically when it comes to people's worth and people's money, like I would skew lower. I would say like 7.5. If you don't feel like that is worth spending $60 on, then by all means wait for a price drop, because like for me, I felt like my money was well invested and well, I already like spent my money. I'm like, I feel good about that. For someone
Right.
else, I can totally see them being like, wow, I just wasted $60 on this game. And like that's totally a world where that exists for someone. So I think it's worth maybe holding out a little bit if you're a little skeptical about this game. Like we said earlier in the show, like wait till maybe holiday, and when it's around 40, pick it up, and there's going to be already more content than there is right now. But yeah, I think this game is definitely, the promise of this game is very exciting. And right now, I think it has a really good base. And I think that will only improve later on. Like we saw with Battlefront 2, it had a terrible, terrible base when it launched back in 2017. There were so many issues with that game. Now, if you play it in 2020, which is what I did, it's a really great game.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine that the Avengers will follow that same level of trajectory. And we see that again with like No Man's Sky, something like that. And it will only improve. And if it is already starting off as a good game, then it's going to excel, I think, later on.
Well said. Well, I think that's probably going to do it for this week's episode of Excelsior. If you enjoyed, if you're new to the show, be sure to, if you're on the video version, sub to JoyClicks so you don't miss out on future episodes every Saturday. Future streams from me and Jack playing through more hives. We're going to try to get this platinum trophy together in the coming months.
Oh, yeah.
And we got to get Kevin in on this. We got to get him in at least in some sort of high-level content one time. So
We could do it.
yeah. If you want to see any of that stuff, obviously we have archives as well from the beta streams, and this past week we did some hives, Jack and I. Like I said, available on youtube.com/joyclicks, very close to 2,000 subs. But this show is also available on audio services like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pocket Casts, Google Play, all the podcast services. You can look it up, Excelsior, under the JoyClicks name, or just look up Excelsior, a Marvel's Avengers podcast. You'll find it. If you enjoy the show, and you can do so on your given platform of choice, we would very much appreciate if you could give us a 5-star rating, write a review if you're feeling extra nice. But anything to show your support of the show helps immensely. Maintain that number one Marvel's Avengers podcast status. It just takes a second. But Jack, thank you for joining. Where can people find you?
Thanks for having me. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at FascinatedJack. If you like Pokemon, we got a show for you. It's called My First Mon. Christian is on that show the Pokemon expert, and I am the Pokemon novice. And we're both playing through Pokemon Crystal. So it's a fun time. So you can go find that on podcast services and youtube.com/joyclicks.
Very nice. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Twitch at Chris N. Buckley as well. And Agents of Excelsior. $2 tier. If you want to get your questions in on patreon.com/joyclicks, you can in every coming week. Or leave some feedback on the video down below in the comments about your feelings on the game, your pulse of everything, because it's always nice to have a number of resources to pull from in terms of community pulse as a host. Like, the subreddit is great. That is a very active subreddit. It is brutally honest, and the developers share a lot of information on there. But on a ground level, in terms of what your level of commitment is to the game, I think it's very interesting to hear what everybody thinks about it. So, yeah, don't be shy. Be sure to let us know what you think. So, until next week, though, Excelsior.
Excelsior.